Hello, my name is John Massari, and I am a media composer. There was a time where I called myself a film composer, and that was the time where movies were actually released in theaters and you watched television shows. Now things are streamed, video games and such. So now I'm a media composer, and I have my own business. The business is called Cinematic Steampunk, and we provide original music production and music product for the media industry.
Interesting. Hi, John Massari. I'm so glad that you agreed to be interviewed by me today. I have a few questions. May I begin?
Please.
All right, great. I'm wondering how long you've been in or worked in this business.
Well, first of all, thank you for interviewing me, and answer your question, how long I've been in this business. Oh my goodness, for quite some time. I'd say my very first professional assignment was in 1979, and it was for the Walt Disney Company.
Wow. May I ask what your overhead is?
Well, my overhead changes depending on the project. My basic overhead is, I should tell you what my overhead is. Overhead is basically software updates, computer updates, hardware. There was a time where I had maintenance of hardware. That was a huge overhead because hardware equipment fails. There's upkeep. For instance, on cables, when I used to have a lot of hardware equipment, required lots of cables, lots of power supplies and what have you, and these things have to be maintained and switched out as needed. So my overhead has actually gone down over the years because managing hardware equipment has all but disappeared. So I would say my overhead in ratio to my income has fallen greatly, and so my overhead is probably would only be limited to the rent of my office and transportation, which is overall kind of nominal. So I would say that is maybe my overhead takes up 25% of my business.
May I ask what your profit is?
My profit varies. That's a very interesting question for anyone.
You do not have to answer it, by the way.
I understand, but I'll give you an answer. The profit is relative. This is where it gets complicated, and this is where many people are discouraged from getting into the media business. Your profit is sometimes earned over a period of years. In other words, you may finish a product but not see the fruits of the labor from that particular project 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line. And then at that point, it will keep reaping benefits in many ways. The project that you worked on, that you were offered not much money in exchange for ownership of your property, you can then take that property and make what's called secondary and tertiary income. For instance, I may work on a movie that I like the director, I like the script, I see that it has potential. However, they're basically getting all their friends to work on it for free. And we're not talking about a student project, we're talking about a professional project with full-on professional people with lots of experience that decide, okay, we will give up our time and our expertise working on this project, and in my case, it would be the actual music score. And so it's my responsibility to get that score done and have it be just as every bit as quality as good as if someone had paid me my full fee. But now I own the property, so I can now take that property and license it for other movies and for what are called music production music companies that place it in commercials, other movies, other TV shows. And this, over a period of years, will pay back much more than if I had gotten an initial creative fee. So it basically, in my work, you have to learn how to weigh those risks and rewards in such a way that you can keep yourself, you project your income into the future. So being creative and then having a business entrepreneurial sense is very important in the media business.
All right. What are your future plans in this business?
Oh, well, thank you. I have some very interesting future plans. I'm working with a number of friends of mine that I've worked with over the years. We have a long-term goal. Our short-term goal is to put on a live to film concert of a particular movie that I did years ago that's a cult classic, and we're going to be performing that in May of this year. And I'm not doing it all by myself. That's another thing you have to do. There's many people helping me out with public relations, the actual putting on the concert. The actual putting on the concert itself and performing the music is actually the easiest part. Mm-hmm. It's getting people to sit in the theater, coming up with a public relations plan and an advertising campaign that will basically bring the attention of the world on this concert. Even though the world is not going to be there, the world will be paying attention to it. Fans of this movie, they may not be able to come to this concert. They're all over the world, but they can participate in very specific ways through social media, and I can't go into the details. So we're going to be putting on a very successful live-to-film concert. From that success, I want to branch off and make a kind of like a music film festival of horror sci-fi genre. For I'm shooting for right now. My main goal is to be every year at the Hollywood Bowl, not only maybe my movie, but several other movies, and have it be a weekend event where people watch great sci-fi horror films and enjoy that over the weekend, and then maybe at night there will be a concert. So we're not going to be doing that soon, so we're going to shoot for other venues that are somewhat smaller and build up to a big venue like the Hollywood Bowl. But from initial market research we've done, that would be an event that would be very well attended.
That sounds pretty amazing. So obviously your business type is a little unconventional, but I'm going to ask how many employees you have. I guess, do you work with other people, or do you do most of the work yourself, or do you have people you consult with?
That's a very good question. Well, it varies. I don't have full-time employees. For instance, in November, I had to work on 2 movies at one time, and it took me 2 months to finish them. There was no way humanly possible I would do them all by myself. So on one film, I reached out to a community of composers who I know that were very good. I asked who's available, and I distributed the work amongst myself and 7 other composers. So each person has, instead of one person doing 35, 40 minutes worth of original music, we now have each guy or girl is doing 3 or 4 minutes of music. That way they can focus on it, feel really proud about their work, and give it all of their effort. Yeah. And the project was done in a matter of weeks instead of a matter of months. Yeah. And so I hired 7 people, and then there are times where I hire an orchestra, and there could be as many as 15 people, as many as 60 people. I don't consider them my employees. They are more or less, the personnel that's required to finish the job. But I have maybe 3 to 4 people at any given time that are helping me out in one way or the other to do my work.
Oh. All right. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions about your background, starting with education. So,
okay.
Where have you attended school, and what was your major?
Well, all my life I studied music, and I've always played in bands, and I've always done something related to music. I studied at the University of California at Los Angeles, UCLA. I attended there for 4 years, but I also studied privately with professionals that were already working in the industry. I guess you can call it a mentoring kind of situation. Of course, I sought these people out. There was no program, mentoring program that you would apply for. I would just read the biographies of successful composers and kind of mirrored their steps. I noticed that any composer really worth their salt that I admired had studied under someone else when they were starting out. And it was really tough because the standards are like very, very high. And I learned a lot of very good work ethic practices that I still practice today, and I pass on to younger composers that I'm mentoring.
Right, so another personal question. Where were you born, and how did you end up in Los Angeles?
Oh, do you really want to hear that story?
Yes.
Okay, I was officially born in Manhattan, New York. And by the age of maybe 11 months, or it's probably not even a year old, maybe just slightly over a year, my parents decided they were going to move to California. And do you know why they wanted to move to California?
Why?
Do you seriously want to know?
Yeah.
Well, okay, my heritage is Italian, and my father was from Italy, and he had served in the Korean War, and he immigrated to the United States. He served in the Korean War, and he married my mom, and they had me, and they were living in Brooklyn. Okay, and sometimes in Brooklyn there are cultural elements that you have to contend with. For instance, my grandmother would get a knock at the door, and there would be someone there that had 20 gallons of olive oil, and she would have to buy it. And there was a certain criminal element you had to deal with. Mm-hmm. So one day, my father was asked, he was offered a very nice sum of money to perform a little job, basically deliver a package every Thursday night, and he would get the equivalent of a month's pay in one day. And he said, "Okay, that sounds interesting. Let me ask my wife and see what happened. Let me let her know about it, and let me get back to you." So when he got back to the apartment, he just told my mom, "Packing up, we're leaving to California," because once you go down that road, you never come back. And he knew that, and I really appreciated that because I can't see myself growing up in that environment. So we moved out to California, and they basically put me in a box and kept driving until they reached the ocean.
Wow, that's quite a story.
Mm-hmm.
So on a different note,
yes.
Speaking about other countries, would you like to expand your business to another country or make it more international?
Well, in many ways, I do that right now. There's music that I have right here that I wrote. I composed on like this, and I made notations and notes, and there was an individual who expanded it for the orchestra for me. He's called an orchestrator. I do my own orchestrations, but in this particular time I needed some help. This particular orchestrator lives in Germany.
Wow.
So, and there's a musician that I work with quite often, and she's part of my cinematic steampunk organization. She's in Canada, and she plays cello. She's also a composer. So in a way, I have expanded to the international market with the people I collaborate with. As far as businesses, there's a company that's based in London. It's called Extreme Music, and they administer a lot of my music that I own, and they now share ownership of my music, and it appears in video games, commercials, and what have you. So it's very important and vital to be aware of the international community in whatever venture you get into, because someone is always doing it, what you do, in a different and interesting way.
Cool. So I am planning on starting a business enterprise as well. It is called Bully's Bagels, the bagel food truck. You might have heard of it. And so we want to probably start it at a college campus. And so, you know, there are bagels, right? And there are a lot of different kinds of bagels, and you put a lot of different things on them.
Right.
And they're really delicious, as you might know.
Right.
And yeah, so we wanted to make it, you know, all organic and, I guess, you know, honest manufacturing and all of that, so that, you know,
sustainable.
Yeah, okay. Definitely. All the environmentalist principles. So do you have any advice to give me on my business plan?
Well, having had a Bully bagel, which is absolutely delicious, because you never just want one. Here's what I would recommend. You said a food truck.
Yes.
Okay. Well, any venture you get into, it's good to try to start in steps, like little steps, because when you start in little steps, your successes will be small, but your failures will also be small, and you can never progress without making mistakes and failures. So when I say failure, that means, you know, you may make a batch. Oh my goodness, it doesn't sell that day. Oh my goodness, it's selling the second day. But on the third day, you completely sell out. You know, and then you find out, wow, I guess Monday and Tuesday is a bad day. Wednesday is the day to go. You know, so next time I'll make it for Wednesday. So, you know, it's this little trial and error that everyone has to go through in order to get success. So I would highly recommend looking at some other businesses that have enjoyed success and see how they got started. Something comes to mind is, you know Pink's Hot Dogs, right? Yeah. Right? Pink's Hot Dogs over there on La Brea and Beverly. They just didn't start out with a store that big. They started out with a little cart. He would boil up the hot dogs, have them ready, and he knew where the customers were that would want hot dogs. There were, I'm not sure if I remember the story correctly, but he knew at certain parts of the city, you know, there was a day where the newspaper was delivered 3 or 4 times a day. There would be the early morning, there would be the mid-morning, the late afternoon and evening editions. There were like 4 editions. Well, people used to rush to get the newspaper, especially during big news times. And guess where his food cart was for Pink's Hot Dogs? Right where the people are. Yeah. So he identified, first of all, he made a great product. That's the key, to make a great product. And make sure that great product is in a place where people can see it and get access to it, and you have to know when the people are going to be there and when they're going to be hungry. You know, knowing when people are hungry and being there with really great food. And now, Bully's Bagels, I know it's a perfect breakfast food. It's also a good snack food. So definitely that's an early morning thing. So I would say start off with a cart. Some kind of cart, or something on a smaller nature, or you know, you're gonna have to, like, for the first few weeks, maybe offer like a 2-for-1 or a 3-for-1 price, you know, just to get people familiar with your product. Anyways, that's what I would say. Definitely study the example of successes that and what steps they took, and everyone's gonna have a different story.
Wonderful. So I will definitely study up and get to work. Thank you so much, Mr. John Massari.
You're very welcome.
All right. I'm interested in this piece of music. Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Oh yes, this particular piece of music is called "The Prodigal Son," and it's from a It's from a virtual reality movie called The Story of Jesus Christ in Virtual Reality. And it's going to be coming out this Easter.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So
Interesting.
that's that, amongst other things.
All right. Thank you so much for having this little chat.
You're very welcome. We'll fade out the music as we say goodbye.